reopening in northwest Indiana this morning. So we'll have a few more cars on the roads. It's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1 hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Clouds on the increase, high 52, 41 at O'Hare. Next news at 7, breaking news as it happens, and Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560 The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560 The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. It is a journey indeed, this whole process of getting to the other side of the lockdowns and, of course, the viral spread as well. Over the weekend, Larry Kudlow was on with Jake Tapper talking about what he expects and the people he's speaking with expect for a rebound coming out of the reopening.
The economy is still in a terrible contractionary phase. Tremendous hardships everywhere. That's why we've put up several rescue packages led by President Trump and with the bipartisan support of the Congress. So we are working through that. It's going to be very difficult in the months ahead, no question. Having said that, I will note that the Congressional Budget Office and a bunch of private forecasters, Wall Street Journal surveys and so forth, are looking for a very strong second half economic rebound and suggesting that 2021 next year could be one of the fastest growth rebounds in American history or recent history.
Yeah, I mean, that may be true, but what does that actually look like coming from the depths of what that will actually look like before the economy is fully functioning again, like $20 billion worth of, $20 trillion worth of economic activity again in this country. President Trump indicated what he wants the next step to be, at least in part, like as a requirement. Mitch McConnell wants tort reform for companies reopening, and there's some good reason on that score. President Trump said this at the Fox News town hall last night.
But we will be doing infrastructure. And I told Steve just today, we're not doing anything unless we get a payroll tax cut. That is so important to the success of our country.
And then just in context, this rather remarkable post from the CDC over the weekend. Alex Berenson caught it. According to this is CDC Facebook page. According to the latest CDC COVID View report, increases in hospitalization rates for COVID-19, which are cumulative, have started to level off. The hospitalization rate is highest among adults 65 and older, and similar to what has been seen during a comparable time period during a recent high severity flu season.
Flu season, yeah.
So this is consistent with what people have been saying, and it's been mischaracterized by the press. We're not saying, no one is saying COVID-19 is the same as the flu. When that statement has been made, it's been meant to say the suffering quotient is similar to the flu. The death load, if you will, is similar to a severe flu season. That's what Nobel Prize winning chemist and structural biologist and computer scientist at Stanford, Michael Levitt, has said, and others. And now the CDC is saying it. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by John Tamny. He's the editor of RealClearMarket's, RealClearMarket's.com, director of the Center for Economic Freedom at FreedomWorks, and author of The End of Work, Why Your Passion Can Become Your Job. John, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's start by getting your reaction to what Kudlow had to say about the outlook and what Trump suggests is a must-have in terms of next policy action by D.C.
I first put out a column on April 13th predicting a big economic rebound. Let me be clear, not because of anything government will do, but just because the people who build this country, the entrepreneurs, this is what they deal with on a daily basis. This is not to excuse the jaw-droppingly stupid response from politicians in all levels where they needlessly forced a contraction and put tens of millions out of work and forced mass bankruptcy. Politicians deserve enormous contempt for panicking, for having no foundations about letting people be free to do what they're supposed to do. But if you look throughout history, Nike founder Phil Knight, he spent 18 years telling his wife what he didn't believe, that Nike would survive. You talk to any entrepreneur, this is all they know, is constantly staring death in the face and figuring out a way to persevere. And so what will happen is what always happens. Politicians get us into needless wars. They cause needless financial crises. This is what they do. And what will happen is entrepreneurs will bail out the political class again, and they will have the arrogance to say it was the Trump recovery or the Biden recovery. No, it has nothing to do. I don't need more policy. We don't need more policy from Trump or Biden or anyone. We just need freedom. And when you have that, entrepreneurs do amazing things.
That's a William Wallace quality call for freedom, or at least an Elon Musk quality call for freedom. In a recent piece at RealClearMarket's.com, you said this: government spending is harmful not because of the debt, but because of the nature of the spending. Explain.
Well, because why would we ever focus on debt? What difference does it make whether Congress gets it by taxing it away, by just taking it from us, or paying us a very low rate to waste the money? The problem always is the total amount of dollars spent, because that just signals all the control that Nancy Pelosi, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Donald Trump have over the economy. Government spending is the problem. I mean, let's just ask the question. If I give you the scenario of $50 trillion in federal spending over the next 10 years, all of it, quote, balance, or $25 trillion in federal spending, half of it borrowed, which would you take? I think you'd take the deficit scenario every time, because it's the dollars spent. And because there's no such thing as government spending, what there is just political allocation of precious resources. Basically, Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy allocating resources rather than Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Fred Smith, the FedEx. You want to leave as much money as possible in the private sector every time. And, certainly this extraction of $2.9 trillion by the political class from the economy is going to slow what would have been a much bigger economic rebound, for the simple truth that that's precious resources that government, in its infinite lack of wisdom and just stupidity, will of course misallocate. That's what politicians do.
Well, John, what about these big, blue state governors who want bailouts from the federal government in order to pay off their pension debt?
It's a shameful thing, but it might surprise you that I have a slightly different view on that. I've never liked the idea that Texas and Florida have a 0% income tax. Let me explain. That's where I think most taxation should take place. California has high tax rates. Okay, good. California's government does lots of things. And so what you see very often is a lot of the states with really low taxes take lots of money from Washington. And so I don't want bailouts of states. I think the very idea is a non sequitur. But when our side says, look at New York and California, all the spending they do, hey, that's where it should be. The federal government should do very little. I think all state and local taxation should be viewed as a credit against the federal taxes. We want to limit as much as possible that goes to Washington, so that they can try all their experiments and do all the things that they want to do locally.
Well, right, but for example, Texas isn't looking for a pension bailout. I mean, so in terms of the states that I get what you're saying is that the states behave sort of like they behave like an individual is incentivized to behave on the dole. I want somebody else to bail me out of my problems, and as I said earlier in the show. So the states have some sort of moral claim on the federal government to make up for their lost tax revenue. So who makes up for the federal government's lost tax revenue? A printing press? I mean, what kind of paradigm do we want to establish here?
Yeah, well, it's if politicians are going to shut down an economy, they should pay for that. And so,
right.
Again, let me be clear. I do not want bailouts of cities and states. I just don't like our side's argument. Oh, well, my gosh, look at all the waste that. Again, cities and states are where the waste should take place. at which point, if you rip away jobs from workers, if you force bankruptcy, which politicians on the local, state, and national level have done, you better well pay for lower revenue, because I know every American is going to suffer lower revenues. And that's been my problem all along. You know, people said, oh, look, Shake Shack's getting money from the PPP and the Los Angeles Lakers are. As always, people are tricked by politicians. People get all worked up.
Did we lose John? John?
Hello, John?
John, do we have you?
Did you fall in a hole?
Somebody has wrested the phone from John? He must have cut out. All right. Well, we got to let him complete that thought. He was on a roll, so we'll effort to get John Tamny back. We'll come right back.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Macy's reopening 68 stores today, and a House committee wants Bezos to testify. Those stories and more next.
The stock market is tanking. Unemployment will likely reach an all-time high. Experts are saying the worst is yet to come, but what we need now is a solution. We have Colin Plume, president of Noble Gold, for some advice. What can Americans do now to prepare for a financially secure future?
It's time to invest in assets that are sure to maintain value through any economic disaster, such as gold, silver, and other precious metals. Holding shares in companies that might not be there next year doesn't make any sense to me, and the markets are made up of hundreds of companies just like this. Take a look at the Dow Jones from 25 years ago. There are less than a handful of companies that have survived the test of time, such as Kodak and Westinghouse. But the precious metals market is not only surviving, it's thriving.
That's encouraging, Colin. But how do our listeners, especially ones without financial savvy, explore the best strategies for their specific needs? And do we even have gold left? I heard there's a shortage.
We have helped thousands secure their investment and ready to help more. Just visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com.
Macy's begins to try to get back to normalcy today as it reopens 68 of its stores closed by the Chinese coronavirus. Texas and other states that have loosened restrictions will see the first doors begin to swing open, but Macy's expects to have all of its 775 stores reopened over the next 6 weeks. Electronics retailer Best Buy also trying to reopen 200 of its stores this month. House lawmakers investigating the market dominance of big tech. They want Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos to testify to address possible misleading statements by the company on its competitive practices. The House Judiciary Committee could subpoena Bezos if he refuses to appear voluntarily. Citing the coronavirus, NASA is warning the public against traveling to Florida for this month's launch of 2 astronauts aboard a SpaceX rocket. Please join me for Lou Dobbs tonight, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 10 Eastern on the Fox Business Network. This is the Lou Dobbs Financial Report.
AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, all right, we're back with John Tamny, editor of RealClearMarket's.com. John, we were on a roll, or you were on a roll, I should say, so we didn't want to lose you. Let's just pick it up where we were. You were talking about providing clarity on whether or not you're a supporter of states or municipalities being bailed out from their unfunded pension and health care liabilities.
Well, I think it's important to stress is that so often politicians trick people. They get them outraged about Shake Shack getting $10 million and the L.A. Lakers and Harvard getting money and everything. If only that's what politicians did, just hand out money here and there to favored constituents and important constituents. And because what it does, if they're just doing that, the big problem is the $2.9 trillion that the federal government extracted from the economy in response to all the other mistakes made by politicians. And so I think too often we focus on these little things. Oh, look at this earmark, look at this handout. The big problem is the federal government with few and defined powers somehow has the capacity to take that much money out of the economy. It's way too powerful, and it is precisely because it's got too much of a claim on present and future production of every single American.
Michael Milken gave an interesting interview over the weekend in the Wall Street Journal, in which he said a couple of things I want to get your reaction to. One, he said about the issue of government bureaucracy and the bottlenecks and holding up testing and holding up development of antivirals and a vaccine. To say that you should have done something on January 12th that you didn't do, so what? I don't have any time for that. Zero. I have no energy except to understand where we are today. And Milken points out that what he's doing in terms of pushing philanthropic funding of the development of medicinal remedies to the virus and just in general what he's been doing for the better part of the last 2 decades. What we're doing is pushing the funding. Philanthropy is about 3 to 5% of all medical research, but it's often what gets it going.
Milken to me is the greatest capitalist who ever lived. If you think about how he propelled us forward, it's awe-inspiring. And so what he says, I think, matters a lot. He knows of what he speaks. If you look back to John D. Rockefeller, the richest man who ever lived, he moved forward a lot of studies of immunology that saved millions of lives, not just in the U.S., but around the world. And so this is why I've been responding from day one that the last thing you do in fighting a virus is impose mass poverty. You want people getting seriously rich. You want the economy growing because that frees up resources, a la people like Milken, Rockefeller, Bill Gates, to find answers. And so I think he's exactly right. If we go back to January 12th, I think the danger of focusing on that, and I don't think it's lost on either of you, is implicit there is that the virus itself proved insurmountable and hit us like a sledgehammer and we didn't know what to do. No. Take that back. The politicians panicked, and in panicking created an economic contraction. Nothing against, not arguing against deaths or anything like that. That's not my place. But the idea that a virus like this could somehow fell the most dynamic economy on earth defies basic common sense. Goodness, we've been through much worse in the past, and this didn't happen. The problem is always only politicians can cause these kinds of crack-ups. This was their crack-up. Let's not blame, you didn't react enough or this government didn't react quickly enough. Businesses react and anticipate problems ahead of time all the time.
And so when this is all said and done, do you think, because we're printing money like crazy, do you think a cheeseburger is going to be $30?
I don't. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who takes the dollar more seriously than I do in terms of I would love to have a better regime, a treasury regime of dollar price stability. But if you look at the gold price, at least for now, it's not signaling a massive outbreak. I think we overstate the ability of the Fed to print money. It can't really do that. If central banks could just print money, then Nigeria and the Bahamas and Peru would have federal spending as large as the United States. The Fed is able to act in size fashion, and I would say damaging fashion, simply because it's backed by the most productive people on earth, the American people. The Fed is a rate follower. Its power over the economy is vastly overstated. And so I'm not so worried about that. What worries me always is what government does in general, because let's never forget, we've got supercomputers in our pockets that would have cost $15 million a few years ago. Capitalism always provides, and so when government gets in the way, it blunts, it slows the process whereby people would cure a virus that thankfully doesn't kill too many people, and doesn't sicken too many people, and it would solve all sorts of other problems.
Oh, that said, Leon Cooperman, who is a billionaire investor, as you know, said this recently: capitalism as we know it will likely be changed forever. When the government is called upon to protect you on the downside, they have every right to regulate the upside. Do you agree that capitalism had changed forever because of the response here?
There's that argument. Let's not forget that when government gives you money, it doesn't just walk away. It expects some control, and that's why I've always argued that 2008 was not a consequence of banks failing. Financial institutions have been failing for decades, for centuries. What it was is markets were spooked by the idea that governments around the world had gained so much power over us for the reasons that Cooperman said, that once they do this, they want to regulate you more on the upside. And so it certainly is a concern. And this is why I'm grateful for shows like yours. We must control this narrative. This was not a consequence of capitalism failing. This was not a consequence of a delayed arrival, a delayed response. It was a consequence of politicians panicking. And so we must limit the ability of politicians to regulate on the way back up. It's a legitimate concern. But again, I think throughout history, there's always that this is the end of this is the end of this. Warren Buffett has gotten rich buying from pessimists about the United States. I think it would be naive to presume that this time is different, that the U.S. is going to be forever altered. I seriously doubt it.
Sure. You don't want to be a Francis Fukuyama and have to correct yourself, right? John Tamny, editor of RealClearMarket's.com, director of the Center for Economic Freedom at FreedomWorks, author of The End of Work, Why Your Passion Can Become Your Job. John, thanks as always for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very insightful. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
You know, spring cleaning doesn't just mean the deep clean you do around the house once a year. You may want to do some tidying up for your business's digital marketing, and Salem Surround can help. We give you all the right tools to surround your target audience and turn website visitors into website leads. Contact Salem Surround for a free evaluation of your digital presence and learn how to get your advertising message in front of today's consumers. Learn more at surroundchicago.com. That's surroundchicago.com, connecting you with new customers.
As you walk around the yard this spring, you'll likely see some cracked or sunken concrete, maybe a sidewalk, a stoop, your driveway, or your patio. Well, guess what? Those problems will only get worse, but there's an easy solution, and that solution is with Permaseal Basement Systems. Their poly-level process can raise and level sunken concrete quickly and effectively, putting an end to the eyesores and, the dangerous trip hazards